Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to wait a couple of more minutes to let people join, and then we're going to start. Okay, so I think we're going to start. So hi, everybody. Welcome to our webinar, Danger in Plain Sight, Cyber Threat in Social Media. This webinar is being recorded, and you will get the recording in a couple of days. You can ask questions in the Q&A section. We will reserve time at the end to answer all the questions. And I will give the floor to Dr. Guy Almog. Guy?
Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to this webinar. And today we'll talk about the cyber threats in social media. Now, this is something that for, well, obvious reasons, right? A lot of cybersecurity specialists and individuals and organizations, sometimes it looks, let's say, less scary than the regular stuff you hear about in this regard, right? If you hear about, for example, cyber threats from the dark web, you hear a lot about malware logs, ransomware, black marketplaces, all kinds of scary places. And usually when you think about danger in the cyberspace, so social media is not necessarily the first thing that you'll think about. But in this session, I want us to go over some of the most common risks that you can encounter in this realm as well, and see how it is connected to other very dangerous, let's say, risks out there, and also how you can mitigate those risks both to you and for your organization. Okay, so what we'll have today, we'll start with a short intro about social media in general, right? A few definitions just to put us on the same page. And then we'll go over some of the most common and relevant security threats with regard to social media. So the first one is exposure. The second is brand abuse and/or identity theft or identity fraud. And the last one is we'll deal with some of the more, let's call them serious scenarios, which include phishing, different kinds of financial scams, and also malware infection, which, as you know, could lead to very serious stuff like ransomware incidents for huge organizations, which could be catastrophic in various terms. And also, of course, other risks in social media exist, right? Misinformation, bullying, and other kinds of risks that maybe we'll have a few words on those as well, but this is not the main focus of the session. And finally, we'll also have some time for Q&As or any other comments you wish to share with us. I'll be very happy to hear. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. Now, when we're talking about social media, like a lot of other areas in threat intelligence, we can talk about the clear web and the deep web, right? And in social media, you have both. When we're talking about the clear web, basically we're talking about everything in social media, in all social media platforms that you can easily get to or search via common search engines, right? So for example, you can search on Google or Bing or Baidu or any search engine you are using for a certain result from a certain social media platform and get the result. You don't even have to have a user to reach this data. And when we're talking about deep web information inside social media, we're talking about several levels of deep web, right? You can, let's say, put on the map how deep the specific, let's say, intelligence you're talking about is located. But let's say closer to the surface, you have stuff that you only need to have a registered user on the platform, and then you can reach this information. And on deeper levels, you have closed groups inside social media, you have private messaging inside social media, and so on. Maybe I'll show you a few examples, and then it will be a lot clearer. Okay, so here we have a few very recent search results from Google. All are indexed from Facebook, right? So all of these results, right, even though they are dealing with seemingly suspicious or malicious activity, right, like all kind of hackings, etc., you can get them from the clear web, right? You see them indexed on various search engines. You can access this information even without a Facebook user. So this is definitely something that we'll call clear web, even though, of course, it could pose a risk, right? Clear web doesn't mean that it's not dangerous, but it's only like an indication that you can get this information rather easily. This is another example of clear web results from Facebook, again, about threat actors selling fake IDs for ID documents, for example. Okay, and this is one of them, right? I opened that, and as you can see, on Facebook, everyone can see it even without a Facebook user, also indexed in Google Cache. You see here the details of the threat actor, and then you can contact him or her via WhatsApp, email, telephone number, to supposedly buy these fake documents. Okay, so this is entirely what we will call clear web. On the other hand, this is another example of a clear web account from Instagram. Supposedly, this account relates to the activist group Anonymous, and you can see all of the posts are public. You can press that. You have various links in those videos or in those posts. And again, this, even though this is clear web, it could, of course, lead the users of Instagram to dangerous places if they're not careful. On the other hand, as I said, you have parts of social media that we'll call deep web, right? And there are different levels of deep web, as I said. But for example, this is a group, pretty large group. So you can imagine that the criteria for joining this group is not very harsh, and probably everyone who wants can just click and join without a very rough screening process, but without a tough screening process. But still, this is a private group, and you won't be able to see the discussion and the posts and the files shared inside this group without joining. Other groups are, of course, more exclusive. You can see this group has only 8,000 members, right? And this group has only 80 members. Again, maybe doesn't necessarily mean that this group is more valuable or interesting in terms of intelligence, but of course you have very small groups of just a few individuals. Some groups have dozens of individuals, and other are very, very large, mostly for sharing information between individual and threat actors. And this is just some examples from Facebook, but other social media have other kinds of systems and closed group, etc., etc. And as I said, we have different levels of, let's say, protection of the data inside each group. Some groups you can't even see without an invitation or without a direct link to the group, and some groups you can find, but you cannot see the data inside without the admin letting you, admitting you into the group. And of course, and this is true, I think, for most social medias that you know and probably work with, the deepest, let's say, part of them is everything that is conducted in private messaging, right? Private messaging or direct messaging, depending on the platform. But basically, we don't have visibility to all of the private messaging between users. And threat actors are often exploiting their victims or their target via private messaging, and it's not visible to anyone besides maybe the victim and the threat actor in most cases. Okay, so that's the, let's say, like the context of this session in a nutshell. And now let's start with the first risk, right? The most common risk we often see in social media. And the first one is exposure. And when we're talking on exposure, we have two different kinds, right? Two main kinds of exposure. The first is unmalicious exposure. And what I mean by that is that it's not done on purpose, or it's not done in order to cause someone harm. Someone is either incidentally expose their private information online via social media, intentionally or by mistake, but still maybe without knowing the risks connected to this. So as an example, here we see someone posting a Facebook post about his new car, right? And you can see also the license plate, right? So this is just one example of PII, of private identifiable information that threat actors can harvest and then maybe attack a specific individual via various scams or social engineering, phishing attacks, etc. Another very common issue I see, this is from Instagram. Someone just got their license and they're posing with the new driver license. And of course, if you, and I see this a lot, and of course, if you zoom in, right, good enough, you can also take all of the private information from the license. And now we have the full name of the individual, maybe the autograph, the signature, you have the full date of birth, the driver license number, and a lot of very crucial information for various kinds of fraud, which could be directed, as we'll see, against the specific individual, but also maybe against the individual's family, friends, and organization that he or she works for. Okay, and on the other side of exposure, we also have, let's say, a more malicious kind of exposure, in which threat actors are exposing information about victims via social media. And this is also something that we often see, right? So in this case, we see, for example, someone supposedly selling passports or all kinds of identification documents. And again, this is via clear web result on Facebook, right? And you can see that he posted or she posted pictures of actual passports and actual details of probably people who don't know that their identities have been leaked, exposed online. Okay, and we have a lot of these examples I just took before this session started. An example from a few days ago, you can see the date here, right? Someone posting on Facebook an example of a driving license with actual details of an individual and asking the let's say the supposed clients or victims, right? We're not sure what the end game here might be. He might again be scamming them in a way, but then the communication moved to a more private channel via WhatsApp in this case, but a lot of time the private messaging on Facebook is also enough to lead the victim through some kind of a scam. So we have a lot of these examples. This is another one, right? A lot of PII are exposed intentionally. So this is, as we've seen, in this case, the motive of the threat actors is financial, right? They want to maybe sell, right, some kind of passports or IDs, or also maybe trick supposed customers to maybe download malware or something like that, and then make a profit. On the other hand, you also have a more revenge-based exposure, right? So this is an example I found on Twitter, which I think is already was taken down. You can see that I saw it a few minutes after it was published, but I'm not sure it's available at the moment. But at any rate, what we see here in this case is a threat actor that claims that he dropped names, right, and details of several individuals into 2 large Facebook groups, right? And we see another Twitter user encouraging him and saying, good, make sure all haters are named and shamed. And then he adds that he not only dropped their names, but also their addresses and phone numbers and emails, etc. Right? So this is, let's say we can classify this as hacktivism or maybe revenge-based exposure, right? Malicious exposure on social media. And we see it also for like private cases, right? So this is another example from Twitter from last month, a threat actor publishing full information on a specific individual they target, right? Full name, date of birth, passport, and other identifiable information, including photos. And once they do that, he becomes an easy target for a lot of threat actors for different kinds of scams, etc. Right, and this is also from Twitter, a dox of someone, and another one from April. So, and again, you have doxes not only on Twitter, but on other social media as well. And of course, not only on social media, but this is something you can also come across very easily in social media. And by the way, the examples I just showed you, they're all clear web. But of course, once you join the more closed groups in Facebook, for example, you can get more of these kinds, right? In which threat actors and hackers are sharing information or doxing individual in a much more, let's say, unrestricted manner, because it's harder for the platforms to detect these kind of things in closed group or in private messaging. And then, of course, what we see is only, like, if we'll go back to the like iceberg image, we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg here, because a lot of it is in the deep web, and you'll need access to those groups to understand the full extent of the exposure. Okay, so this covered the main, let's say, points of the first risk, which was exposure. And now let's go to the second risk, which is, I defined it as brand abuse and identity fraud, right? And this, we can talk in this case both on risks for individuals, but also we can talk about risks for organizations. And of course, a lot of times these things are connected, right? A lot of times individual brand is related to your organization. If someone is abusing your personal identity, of course, this can also have ramifications for your organization and for your brand in general. And a lot of time, of course, businesses are centered on one individual or on several individuals. So these are interconnected. So let's go over some common examples. Here we see the official PayPal Facebook account. Okay, we can see they also have the blue check mark, which usually means the account is official. Of course, you can have, let's say, exceptions. Sometimes threat actors can take over an official account. So seeing the official check mark is not 100% guaranteed that everything that you'll see on this page is safe, but it is a good indication. Also, I'll say that while it means that the account is official, you don't know who is commenting, for example, on posts of this account, etc. So you can still have dangerous links or dangerous posts attached to this account. But let's say usually official accounts are monitored better and threats are not persistent, especially in very large account like this one, right? You see the amount of followers here is over 6 million, so probably relatively safe. On the other hand, let's have a look at this supposed verified PayPal account, right? And when you somehow reach something like that on Facebook or any other social media platform, a few red flags should automatically be raised here, right? So the first, of course, if it's not verified, then already you need to maybe start worrying. And other than that, you can always look at the about and try to understand from the extra information there if this looks reasonable or not. So for, let's say, a verified PayPal like official account, this number of followers and likes doesn't make any sense. And in this case, this specific account also leads to a very suspicious link and to a suspicious phone number and to a suspicious private Gmail account. So in this case, you have a lot of red flags waving about, but as you might guess, not everyone immediately notice all of them. Sometimes you're in a rush, or sometimes maybe you are approached, right, by someone from Facebook via direct messaging, and this is an account that you can send direct messages to, and the account owner can reply in private messaging, so we don't have any visibility to what is going behind the scenes with the victims in this case, right? So and a lot of time people, especially who are not necessarily cyber savvy or something like that, they won't notice the red flags, and then they'll fall victim to different kind of scams. This is another example. Obviously not the real Google Center or Google Support Center account on Facebook, right? Only 3 people like it, but still uses their name and logo and probably communicate via private messaging with potential victims. Let's have an example from another platform. Let's jump to Instagram. So like Facebook, you have here a Bank of America official account with the official check mark. By the way, a side note here, I saw cases that the threat actors, when they are creating their accounts on the profile pic, they already include the official official account blue check mark, right in the, for example, here, imagine that in this G, you'll also, someone will put here a blue check mark, right? So again, if you're not pay attention to the details, you might miss that the blue check mark is in the wrong place, right? It's supposed to be here, but let's say the fake account puts it here, right? And then you might miss that it's not the official one. Okay, so back to this Bank of America account, we see that it has a lot of followers, recent activities also looks okay overall, right? Again, doesn't mean 100% that everything in it is safe, because it is open to other users, and other users, of course, can comment with malicious links, etc. But overall, probably a safe account. And on the other hand, you have fake accounts like this one, right? Again, uses the same logo, also very similar name, right? Censored here for security reasons, but besides the low number of followers, which is already a red flag, you see another red flag is that they encourage the victims, right, or the customers supposedly, to reach help via direct messaging, right, which is usually something they'll want to do, right, to take it off the clear web to the deep web, and then have a one-on-one with the victim, which has a very low chances of detection by the platforms. Okay, also you can see here like they don't have a space between the comma and the DM, so different kind of typos and weird grammar is also an indication in a lot of cases. Another example of official, again, very official Google Support Center on Instagram with a low number of followers. And also, of course, if you have any problem, just write us via Instagram, which is totally something that an official Google Support Center will ask the users to do, right? So these are things to pay attention to. And now let's talk about maybe risks for individuals, right? Because we have, as we've seen, brand abuse in the sense of abusing company brand, but of course you can also abuse a personal brand and also just impersonate a living person, especially if there are VIPs in the organization or celebrities, etc. So the examples I took here is Jessica Alba, and this is her actual LinkedIn account. Okay, you can see the number of followers, and according to the activity, this is, let's say, almost 100% verified to be the official account, unless someone took over the account, which is unlikely, right? And also, as you can see, she's also the CEO of the Honest Company, right? So if someone would, let's say, impersonate Jessica Alba, it might be bad, right, in the personal sense, right, like an identity fraud, but also can be directed against her organization. And again, these are all just examples from LinkedIn. We see, and we have more. I just brought a few fake Jessica Alba accounts, right? And again, maybe each one is in a bit in a different vector, right? This one is maybe more business oriented in its approach, right? Because you can see the mention of the Honest Company, right? And maybe the picture here is about a bit more business oriented. But the main red flag, of course, is that this account has only 4 followers, while the real account have almost 2 million followers. Okay, so huge red flag. Another account claiming to be Jessica Alba, using her name and picture, claims to be an actress at USA. And this one is also very similar, both with very low, with a small number of followers. And again, the fake Jessica Albas are not limited, of course, to LinkedIn, right? Once threat actors launch a certain campaign against an individual, they might do it on several fronts, or of course, maybe different threat actors are targeting this VIP via different channels. So in this case, you have more or less a duplication of the official Jessica Alba page on Facebook, right? You see on the left, the official Jessica Alba page, right? You see the blue check mark, and you see the number of followers is over 10 million, right? 100% the real official web page. And on the other hand, right, on the right, you have the official, right, which is obviously not the official page of Jessica Alba, which uses the exact same profile picture and also the exact same background picture, right? So, but you can see the number of followers is, of course, much, much lower, right? Only 500 people instead of 10 million. So it might become very obvious, right? Once you see this data, you see, okay, this is, you immediately understand, okay, this is fake, but still, let's say even if you access regularly the real official page of Jessica Alba, since it looks so similar, right? You don't necessarily always go over all the data once you access it. You might also get tricked, right? And also it has recent activity. Both accounts are posting similar maybe pictures and photos. And this is, of course, just one example of supposed Jessica Alba official page, right? You can find in Facebook other supposedly official pages, and even from the data Facebook shares on the clear web, right? You can see that this account is active and he is communicating with other users, right? I don't know if there are some kind of victims or not, if this is just a joke or some kind of more elaborate scam, but you can see right in the bottom of the screen here that this account typically replies within a day, right? So based on the statistics Facebook provides here, we see that this account gets some kind of activity, right, from different users, and that he replies usually within a day, right, on average. Another issue to pay attention to when you're trying to assess whether an account is fake or not is to have a look at the creation date. Not in all platforms you can do this. For example, on Facebook you can do this, and on Twitter you can do this. You can look when the page was created. So if it was created very recently, it should also raises a red flag, right? Especially if this is, let's say, I don't know, a bank official account or some kind of a big company, and it was just created a few days ago. Obviously, something here is fishy, to tell the least. Okay, so this covers the second risk. So we covered the most, in my opinion, common risks on social media in terms of cyber threats. So the first was exposure. The second was brand reputation, right? Brand abuse. And now in this third part, I want us to get into the more dangerous, right? More serious stuff. And of course, keep in mind that a lot of it can be just a continuation of what we've seen before, right? Because if you're on the fake account of a certain service and you think this is the fake account, this is the real account, you can, by mistake, find yourself in very dangerous territories, including phishing and downloading malware to your computer, etc. So let's have a look at several examples. Here we see the official account of Pubg Mobile, which is a very popular video game. You can see over 15 million followers, recent activities, very popular game. And here we see another very official, as you can see, a Pubg Facebook page, right? Obviously, this is not the real one, but people might fall for it. It says official. Not everyone pays attention. And also, once you get to this account, you see good news, rewards, free stuff. Maybe you'll click it, right? And then you have here two suspicious links, right? And if you click one of them, you might get into a phishing website or to a website that will download malware to your computer. In this case, again, I censored it for security reason, but you can see in the second link here on the right that it's something tan.ts.com, right? And this is the same website, which is already, by the way, was categorized by Google as malicious, which means someone already reported it to be malicious, phishing, or something like that. But keep in mind that this is not always the case when you're pressing malicious links, right? Because you might press it and it wasn't reported yet, right? If it's a fresh, let's say, threat, the website will look regular and you might not notice that this is a phishing website or a dangerous website. And in addition, this also changes based on the browser you are using. So if you're, for example, using Safari from your iPhone, you won't necessarily get the Google Safe Browsing, or if you're using Opera browser or Firefox, every browser acts a bit differently, and you have differences in detection of potential threats. And even Google, for, let's say, very recent threats, it would not give you this scary red screen, but you'll just access the phishing website and might not notice it. Okay, so something I see a lot with regards to malware is people clicking on supposedly safe links on social media, downloading some kind of a supposed, I don't know, file for a program or some kind of, in this case, I brought an example of a hack to some kind of a popular game. But once they open this link and download it to their computer, press and activate it, the malware starts running in the background and collects huge amounts of data and can lead to very, very, very serious ramifications, including ransomware incidents for huge organizations. And by the way, sometimes this also happens, for example, if the employee is working just for a second, right, on a computer in her or his house, right, his private machine, and the whole family uses maybe the same machine, maybe their kids are using the machine for gaming, right, and his son just downloaded this free skin hack, right, and then the machine has malware on it and no one knows, and then the employee just uses it for a second to check the email or something like that, access Jira, I don't know what, and then the threat actor gets the full credentials and cookies to this account. Okay, so I'll show you a recent example or a few examples from our system, right? This is from Argos. This is the system we use in CyberInt. So basically, the way malware works, right? In this case, we have an example of red line infection. It sits on the computer, right? And right after the time of the infection, it steals all of the credentials stored on the browsers. It steals, in some cases, right? This is examples of credentials stolen. So Apple ID, Facebook, Google, basically everything that the computer was used to log into, right? And the passwords were stored, the malware will steal them. And in addition, it steals, in a lot of cases, files from the computer, right? You can see here you have a file grabber, which took files from the admin directory, right? You can see here the docx, right? Document, Microsoft Word documents. And in addition, the malware usually also takes a screenshot from the time of the infection. And of course, you get the full information about the infected machine, the time of the infection, right? You can see here the exact time of the infection, the username, the country, basically everything you need, including the antiviruses that the malware bypassed. And in many cases, I see 1 or 2 active antiviruses and the malware still passes them. Usually this happens because the victim downloads the executable file, right? And because they think that this is some kind of a hack right, to a game they're doing or some kind of a free bypass to some kind of program, they click it, and then they tell the antivirus to ignore it or something like that, and then they have a malware infection. So this is the example of the screenshot taken from this malware you just seen, right? You can see here someone is, again, on YouTube searching for Adobe Create Cloud, something new crack. Never touch these kinds of videos or posts on Facebook or YouTube. I see so much malware on these fronts, and you can see that he downloaded or she downloaded this RAR file, and I assume that the infection took place soon afterwards. Okay, and you can see the actual date, right, of the infection is the exact date that you see also in the log itself. Okay, another recent example, right? And this is how the malware looks from the inside, right? You get a list of cookies, autofills, important autofills, passwords, screenshots. In some cases, you also have a file of stolen documents. Okay, and in this case, the screenshot also very similar. You see someone accessing a YouTube video about some kind of crack for a program, right? Sorry, you can see the date. It was just less than a month ago. You can see that he tried or she tried to download, right, some kind of install and tutorial and activation. All of these are super big red flags, right? Free activation, download, crack, and working, right? And you have here also a link to a very suspicious website. And another red flag is very positive comments on the video, which is also a trick threat actors often utilize. They take all kind of avatars or fake accounts on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, and then they post, oh, wow, this is so great, works so good, thank you, what a lifesaver, so great. And usually people don't really read the comments, they just see, oh, a lot of good comments, this has a lot of likes, a lot of views. Probably it's not malware because it has so many views and a lot of people are saying this is legit and working, and then they'll download this. You can see they downloaded some kind of a RAR file, and then they pressed the setup.exe, and then basically the malware took over the computer in the background, and they don't even necessarily know that all of their information is already out there, and threat actors are now sharing and or selling this information on various channels on the darknet, on Telegram, etc., etc. Another issue I wanted to discuss before moving to the last points of this session is financial scams in the sense of fake recruiting. Okay, so this is something you often see via LinkedIn, although you can also see it on Facebook, for example, is you have a fake account, right, that looks like an HR representative or some kind of a talent recruiter on a certain company. Sometimes it's a totally made up name and a made up photo, but sometimes they actually took the actual name and the actual title and photo of the actual HR person and approach candidates and then go over certain steps in the recruitment procedure, and in a certain point they'll ask, okay, now you need to send us your details, and then they'll steal the information, or also take advantage the victim in some kind of financial way, right? Maybe to send some kind of a registration fee, or just some kind of you just need to pay for the insurance before you start working, or something like that, right? And they cash in and disappear. So this is also something that is very common. And I'll have another word about how to fight this phenomena in the end of the presentation. So as I mentioned, keep in mind that all of these risks, and we have other kinds of, let's say, cyber risks in social media, but I think that these are the most common. But of course, you have other kinds of risks. So you have a lot of misinformation on social media, but also not only on social media. You have racism, bullying, and other kind of evils and problems that we're not going to cover or talk about in this specific session, but of course they are also something to consider when assessing the overall risks involved with social media. Okay, now how is a proactive threat intelligence comes into play, right, in this landscape, right? So just to put it in perspective, social media is just one key source that creates, right, the what we call threat intelligence. So if we'll take the example from CyberInt's Argos, right, we see that we are collecting intelligence from different sources, right? So this includes automated discovery, right, ASM discovery of the organization digital assets on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have more classical threat intelligence that collects intelligence from various sources. So of course you have the more, let's call it, sexy and scary sources you hear about often. You often hear about when you think about cyber, right, and threat intelligence. You think about onion websites, on dark web, and on all kind of illegal forums and black markets, etc. Which of course this is something threat intelligence vendors collect, but also a very important part is social media, right? And social media is also a huge playing field on its own, right? And as you've seen, it is connected to a lot of other stuff, right? So you can go from social media to phishing, and from social media to malware infection, and then your employee gets malware on his computer, and then the credentials are being sold on cybercrime forums, on black markets, on maybe just shared and published on paste sites or on other platforms. So everything in the end is connected, and it's important to have this chunk, right, of social media intelligence as part of your overall intelligence coverage. Okay, and of course, after that, right, the second phase will be to find the most relevant, right, let's say, intelligence among the sea of information, right, the ocean of information. You have so much stuff both in the clear and in the deep and dark web. So you'll need to, among these like intelligence, analyze it and try to filter it, and in the end just provide to the customer the most relevant targeted alert, right, on which the customer can take action. And we'll talk in a second about what kind of action. But in the case of social media, a lot of time it will be just to take down the suspicious website, the suspicious accounts, and in some cases maybe investigate further via human engagement, etc. So let's talk about more specifically some tips for mitigating social media risks. So let's start with the organization. And for organization, of course, the first tip, and this is a good tip not only for social media, have a strong security team that also deals with the aspect of social media coverage. Even though, you know, this is social media, sounds less important maybe, it could be critical. Another thing that could help, especially for medium plus organizations, is to have a proactive threat intelligence service for your organization to give you not only the most, let's say, broad intelligence from a lot of sources you might not necessarily get access to, but also the most targeted information, right? You need tailor-made intelligence and not just all the information as a bulk, because analyzing it and making the right detections inside all the information is also very important. Okay, and once you identify certain threats, let's say phishing or fake social media accounts, etc., you need to take action on those threats, which usually mean take them down. And finally, you'll also need to monitor relevant sources on a regular basis. And of course, each organization over time can understand which are the sources which are most critical for this organization. Okay, but as individuals, both as individuals unrelated to organizations, but also we have some responsibility as well for the organization, especially if we are using our private, let's say, machines to log into company interfaces. Phones, computers, almost everyone today use their phone to check to check work-related emails or to connect to various work-related accounts, but also to private accounts, right? Your Facebook accounts, your Instagram accounts, every social media account you have, your private Gmail account, for example. If threat actors get a hold of these kind of accounts, they can abuse them and exploit them in order to maybe have some kind of a social engineering scam against the organization, and then they'll get access to internal interfaces of the organization. So a first possible tip, and again, half-jokingly I'm saying this, but don't use social media. And again, this is a bit of a question, because on the one hand, as you limit your presence on social media, of course, you are less vulnerable in a sense. The chances that you will click on something malicious is not very high. But on the other hand, there is a risk, and especially for VIPs in various organizations, that it will be a lot easier to steal your identity. Because, for example, if you're an HR executive in a certain company and you don't have a LinkedIn account, very easy for a threat actor to create a new LinkedIn account with your name and photo. Very easily, the threat actor will get the right connections from all the employees in the company, probably. And then once this account looks very real with a lot of connections, the name and the photo, it will be will be a bit hard for you to create your own account, because already someone else has the real account, right? And it's a big risk for the organization and the other employees. So especially if you're a VIP, there are other factors for not using the social media, or at least for not securing yourself, let's say, a very obviously official account on the relevant social media platforms. Okay, but at any rate, as an individual, always limit as much as possible when you can the PII, right, the private information you are exposing on social media. Don't post, obviously, photos of your ID, passport, but also, if possible, you should avoid exposing your full date of birth, maybe your full name even, if possible, etc. Right? Address, phone number, all of these are better left out of social media if possible. Also, just to understand, right, your own exposure and visibility, especially if you're an executive in big organization, it's good to have from time to time some kind of investigation into your own digital footprint to see how exposed you are. And always be suspicious and vigilant, right? Sometimes seemingly official and legitimate accounts, pages can lead you to malicious links. Sometimes even truly official accounts or real LinkedIn accounts can be hacked and abused by threat actors to send via private messaging suspicious links. So, or it's always better to be safe than sorry in these cases. And of course, if you get a friend request from a suspicious connection or friend, recommended to do some kind of background check on them. I'm not saying that you should, for example, on LinkedIn, do not connect with anyone, but you can connect with a lot of people, but just be very, let's say, cautious with how you communicate with them on private messaging, and because this is usually where stuff gets more dangerous. And of course, once you do want to access links or files, especially files that you get from social media, it is very recommended to check them on various platforms you have online, right? For viruses, or if you can, from another separate environment, right? Not from your work or home computer, but some kind of a virtual machine, or from a red environment, if possible. Okay, so this is about all I had for now, in a nutshell, about threats from social media. And I thank you all for joining. And a little bit about us, right? We provide proactive threat intelligence services to customers and organizations from all over the world. We have over 100 experts working 24/7 in different places in the world, right? And social media is just a bit of what we cover. As I showed you before, this is a part of the overall picture. And of course, if you are interested to hear more about our solution and services, we'll be very happy to tell you more about it. You can just click this link or scan this barcode, and don't worry, it's not connected to any malware. And yeah, I'll leave it on the screen. And of course, let me see if we have any questions in the Q&As. And I think we have a few more minutes to answer maybe one or two questions, and we'll wrap it up. We'll wrap it up for today.
Yeah, guys, thank you. So we actually have a couple of questions that try to get them in. So first one is, how exactly can you mitigate or take down a fake account on social media?
Okay, thank you, Idan. So the way to mitigate, right, the way to take down a fake account varies from platform to platform, right? Each platform basically have different kind of rules, right, for taking down a suspicious or malicious account. Usually, in most platforms, you'll have the option to report, right? As an individual, you can report an account directly. Again, depending on the platform, this won't necessarily work. Sometimes they need a lot of reports until they take action against a certain account. So this is one vector in which you can act. And also, if you have, for example, a threat intelligence provider, right, like CyberInt, you can also ask your provider to take it down for you. And then we, for example, have a more direct and common, let's say, connection with the social media platform, and the takedown can be much faster. And we also are very accustomed on giving the right evidence and the right, let's say, criteria for doing the takedown as quickly as possible.
Okay, so next question. How can you check the links you get on social media to avoid stuff like malware infection or phishing?
Okay, yeah, so we also mentioned this briefly before. Basically, you have a few very useful tools online that you can do that, right? So if you get a link, and a lot of time, the link you get is a shortened link. So you don't really know what's going on once you click it, right? You have a lot of URL shorteners that both threat actors are using, but also usually they're used legitimately. But you don't necessarily know it until you click it, and then you might be redirected to somewhere else. So the first option is to go to a service like, for example, Visual Ping or something like that. And these are services that you put the URL, and then without accessing the website, you get a screenshot, right? You get you can see the website from this like a service that is using some kind of a virtual machine for you to see, right? So this is the first option. And of course, the second option, if you suspect that this link might redirect you to someone else, you have a lot of very easy and free to use websites that you can just put the URL in them and click analyze, and then they'll give you a list of the path, of the redirection path that the link is doing. And sometimes you have links that are jumping you from maybe 5 different addresses until you get to the actual address, right? So this is also a useful way to check that. Idan, I think that our time is up, or do we have time for one more question? What do you think?
So let's do just one quickly. What should
Sure.
we do if the fake accounts keep popping up even after they manage to take them down?
So if threat actors are keep let's say attacking you on the same vector, right? Let's say your organization, and even though you're remediating the fake accounts and taking them down, still new fake accounts are popping out, sorry. I think that in some cases, it would be maybe more reasonable to approach it not by immediately taking down the suspicious accounts, but maybe trying to investigate from a, let's say, more proactive approach, right? You, for example, create, like, let's say, a persona of a victim and try to engage, right, with the threat actors from the, let's say, the fake account or fake accounts, right? And then try to maybe learn about the modus operandi of the threat actor, or try to communicate with the threat actor. And a lot of time, and again, I'm not suggesting this for individuals. This is something that specialists can do, right, for you as a customer, maybe, right, because it might be dangerous to communicate on your own with directly with the threat actor. But as an organization, surely this is something you'll want to investigate, maybe. And then once you have more information about the way the scam is working, and maybe more information on the threat actor, in some cases, it's also possible to identify the individual that is behind the scam, and then take legal measures against the individual, not only to take down the social media accounts, but also hopefully to put the criminal in jail. So this is, yeah, in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining, and the recording will be sent in a couple of days. Guys, thank you very much, and we're here. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day.